Hi, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne. I am a certified astrologer. I specialize in evolutionary astrology, traditional astrology, and human design. But I especially love to help people understand the cycles that make up this journey in our life. And today I'm going to be focused on those who were born between 1985 and 1986, or you have your natal Pluto in the first 5 degrees of Scorpio. If that's you, you will be experiencing or are experiencing your Pluto square this year. And this is what kicks off what is called your midlife transits. I'll be walking you through what that specifically means for this age group, where it shows up, what themes are present generically. And I'll also be reviewing 2 charts of famous people to orient us to what that means in a specific person's life. I think it's very helpful to see tangible examples. So if you have no idea where your natal Pluto is, what sign, what degree, and you've never run a natal chart before, I've created a free tutorial that walks you through how to do this using free software. And if you want to track your cycles using free software, I've also created a free tutorial. I'll include a link below in case you're interested. I've also included some timestamps below in case you want to jump around. I also created a whole series about the midlife transits if you want to check that out. It gives you more general information about the Pluto square, the Neptune square, the Uranus opposition, the Saturn opposition, and the Chiron return. So if you want to check that out, I'll link that series below. It's super helpful to understand these transits because they can be very disorienting. And that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with astrology, because it helped me so much during this crazy time. But essentially, our Pluto square kicks off our midlife transits. It's a time when we're confronted with power dynamics that encourage us to tap into our personal power. During this time, we are confronted with what needs to be changed in our lives so we can start living more authentically, according to our own unique soul path, which is different for everyone. It's a time period that can be either empowering or destructive, depending on how we deal with this confrontation. But even the most destructive outcomes can lead to significant transformations that can eventually lead to healthy empowerment. Jeffrey Wolf Green describes our soul having 2 different desires: to separate from source and to unite with source. He says the interaction between these 2 opposing desires instigates the drama of personal and collective evolutions. It determines what we think we need, and that determines what choices we make. The actions we initiate determine the reality that we experience. Actions lead to reactions, which lead to other actions, and so on. It's not good or bad, but we do reap what we sow. And this is what is considered karma. It's just about our everyday actions combined with everybody else's everyday actions. It's not linear. We may not get the results of what we do right away, but they come indirectly sometimes and with time in the cycles that we all experience. And so as I've been experiencing this year of chaos and change, I keep reminding myself that the Pluto and Scorpio generation evolves through intense and transformative experiences. Pluto, the planet, symbolizes Hades or hell. It's the modern ruler of Scorpio. And Mars, the god of war, is the traditional ruler. So either way, the Scorpio generation will be confronted with some kind of conflict on their path toward empowerment. Like I said, it can lead to healthy empowerment or destructive empowerment, depending on your own consciousness. In her book, 36 Secrets, T. Susan Chang says this about Scorpio. It is in the nature of Scorpio to transform, shedding its baser instincts as a snake sheds its skin, attaining at length the eagle's keen penetration, powers of perception. So at the base level is the snake, but at the more evolved level is the eagle. There's a transformation process before that happens. And James Burgess labels the first 5 degrees of Scorpio stability. This description is very similar to how Jeffrey Green describes Pluto in general. He says, two powerful forces operate within us that somehow bring a dynamic balance to life. One is our desire for new experiences. The other is sentimental nostalgia for belonging. Each pulls us in opposing directions, and we must always, in each moment, choose which to surrender to. The first 10 degrees of Scorpio are in the Mars decan of Scorpio. So there is a double Mars energy to people born during this time. You are intensely powerful, oriented to struggle for your purpose. There can sometimes be an antisocial temperament to this decan, an emotional severity. Mars represents the Tower card, where everything can be obliterated from time to time in order to start something new. Chang labels this decan the storm of tears because it is the storm after destruction that can leave you heaving and cleansed. It is only by knowing love that we can know loss. Do you resonate with any of these descriptions? I'd love for you to share your experience below. I'm always doing research and I love to get feedback from other people. I'm also going to be analyzing a couple of famous people's charts who were born during this time so we can get some tangible examples of this placement. So stick around if you're interested. In human design, Pluto is in gate 28 here, hanging off of the splenic system. And the splenic system is all about fear. And it's about fear of survival. And in this gate, it's about fear of not having a purpose in your life. The theme of Pluto here is transformation through risk taking, to take risks in order to find purpose. It's an individual gate, which connects to gate 38 here. And gate 38 is the gate symbolizing struggle. So oftentimes people with hanging gate 28 attract people who are strugglers and they struggle together to find their purpose, especially in romantic relationships. I have my Uranus in this gate, which is a different type of energy, but my partner has his sun in gate 38. And, we have come together to struggle in some senses for our sense of purpose. But the 28 side, especially in Pluto, is all about this inner truth of knowing that we need to have purpose in our lives. This gate is part of the cross of unexpected, and it's in the quarter of duality. So the struggle is often relational. It is especially relational during the square because the first decan of Aquarius, which is in gate 41, is ruled by Venus. And it needn't be the struggles with an individual because Aquarius is also about the group dynamic. Chang labels the Venus decan of Aquarius as winners versus losers. The focus here can be a zero-sum game. The first 5 degrees of Aquarius is in the start codon in human design. It's where all life begins. It's where we feel we have to fight to win, because if we don't fight, we may lose everything. We can feel that it's about our very survival during this square. It won't necessarily be this dramatic for everyone, but this is the overall theme here. Where Pluto is placed in your chart and which house it falls in and what aspects Pluto makes to your personal planets will all color your specific experience of this square. Mars usually cancels out Venus, but at what cost? That's what you're meant to find out during this time. What is the cost of such zero-sum struggles of winners versus losers? Chang goes on to say this about the Venus decan of Aquarius. It's the purifying stream, the rebirth of hope. Here, excommunicated, unique, untethered, we are free to look back upon civilization we left behind and imagine what a better world would look like. We are free to think outside the box. In fact, we have no choice but to, because there is no going back inside the box. Forsaking the familiar and striking out for new lands. The name of the game is risk, abandoning comfort and embracing hope. Now, do you recognize this already happening in our lives? And you specifically are really a part of this journey because didn't you hear? It's about risk. It's about taking risks to find our purpose and a better purpose than the one that we're all living in today. So next, I'm going to examine the charts of two very different people who have their natal Pluto in the first 5 degrees of Aquarius, Issa Rae and Stephen Miller. Now, first, I want to acknowledge a clear bias I hold. I am a big fan of Issa Rae's work, and I'm not such a big fan of Stephen Miller's work. The way we see our unique perspective is biased by default, and we should be honest about that. This is where I think astrology can be helpful or harmful. I use it to help me understand people in the world. And one of the most helpful ways to do this is by looking at charts of very different people who have some of the same signatures to see how these signatures play out in different types of people. And when I analyze public charts, I use all of the publicly available information that I have to better understand how these placements in their charts play out in their life. It's a great way to learn astrology. So let's start with Issa Rae. She has an A-rated chart. So this chart is considered a solidly timed chart. We can trust that her ascendant is around this degree and the houses line up. She first received attention for her work on the YouTube web series Awkward Black Girl, which ran between 2011 and 2013. Her 2015 memoir, titled The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, became a New York Times bestseller. In it, she describes her fish out of pond experience growing up in a very white town in Maryland. She formed the production company Hooray Media in 2020. She has Pluto at 4 degrees of Scorpio in her 6th house. So she is developing her soul through transformative experiences related to perfection, daily habits, work, service, and health. The 6th house is also traditionally symbolic of slavery. And she filmed a few shows with Ancestry.com where they researched the genealogy of both sides of her family. Her father is from Senegal and her mother is from Louisiana. In one episode, they talked about a female ancestor on her mom's side who had been lucky enough to have been one of the few emancipated slaves at this time. And she had been emancipated by a Black slave owner, which was surprising to me. I didn't realize that there had been Black slave owners at that time. And in another episode, she learned that she was descended from royalty and that her relative at one point lost his royal status. She mentions how her family has a history of rising from the ashes, of falling and then rising again. And that's also a very scorpionic theme. It's also very symbolic of that tower card that I was talking about. In human design, she has the judgment channel. And the judgment channel symbolizes people who are perfectionistic. I have this channel, so I know what that's about. It's very hard to deal with, and it can be very hard for other people to deal with too. And she talks about how somebody had called her very particular, and she had to kind of look at that in herself And then she had to own that part of herself and be proud of that part of herself. And that really has to do with her nodal journey from the seventh house to the first house. Take ownership of her strengths and her weaknesses, and to really become more proud of, who she was in the process. Pluto is in the third line in gate 28 in her chart, and it means that she will experiment with smaller risks before making a bigger bet. And it's kind of like what happened with her YouTube series. She took a risk in a small pond and it made a big splash. Pluto is transiting her 10th house right now. So she is going to be pushed to confront her personal power in the areas of career and public status. So she will be facing some of these perfectionistic tendencies of herself, and this might affect her health. In fact, she just recently signed a 3-year contract with Paramount, and she's releasing a new book this year. And this book is not so much about herself as it is about advice to other creatives based on her own experience dealing with some of these things about herself that she's learned over time. So it's very symbolic of what she's actually going through with Pluto transiting her 10th house. And she has an interesting dynamic in her chart. Her Scorpio planets, including her south node, are ruled by this Mars in Pisces in her 11th house. And her north node sits in her first house, ruled by this Venus, which is applying to a conjunction to Mars. So she has a long history and expertise of collaborating and delegating responsibilities to others. It's her strength. She is a projector like I am. So she has an undefined sacral center, which means that she has inconsistent access to sacral energy. So she relies on collaborators to contribute energy to her process. She has the channel of the creative role model, but she really does need collaborators. So she describes her lucky angels, people who have shown up for her when she needed it the most. She describes somebody who shared with her an ad platform when she was producing her episodes on YouTube, and she really was just trying to make it work materially. She didn't have access to a lot of resources. And this person came in and shared this information with her, and it really helped her survive during this time. And you can see this also with Jupiter conjunct her midheaven here and conjunct her sun. And Jupiter is considered in detriment in Capricorn. So it's not as helpful as it could be, but it's still pretty helpful. And it's conjunct her sun. So she has luck in areas of her career. Her north node in the first house implies she's learning to stand more firmly on her own, according to her own convictions. And she talks about this in her interviews. She's had to learn that she does bring something unique to the table, and she deserves to have a seat at the table. She has clear relationship themes in her life with Venus and Mars conjunct, both rulers of her nodes. And she is ending or perfecting a relationship cycle in this lifetime because Venus is applying to a conjunction to Mars. It's the ending of a cycle. And it's also in trine relationship to her descendant. So she usually has harmonic relationships with others. She is extremely private, though, and protective about her family and romantic relationship, which can definitely be a Scorpionic theme. She married her longtime boyfriend in 2021, with whom she appears to have been with since 2012, which is a very long time. He's from Senegal himself. Both of her parents were influential in different ways, but she seems really closer to her father. She said she was not as stylistic as her mother. She didn't bond with her mother in that way. She was more of a person who didn't really care about her looks, although she's very beautiful and stylistic to me. She learned her strong work ethic from her father. She says He was focused on nobility, believing that money and status were not everything. And so you can really see that too in Jupiter on the ninth house side of her midheaven. She learned a lot of these lessons from her father. But her parents' divorce when she was a teenager seems to have been a huge surprise to her at the time. This really describes to me Mars applying to a square to Uranus here in the eighth house. Mars emphasizes her male role models, and Uranus, of course, is very disruptive and can spur somebody in a new direction. Her Pluto square coincides with the Neptune square, which will also coincide with the Neptune square for anyone born during this time. And Neptune will be conjunct Saturn in her 12th house. And she has Mercury conjunct Neptune in her chart, which really contributes to her artistic talent in writing. She has a way of tapping in to the collective conscious, to the creative inspiration energies of Neptune. And with Saturn and Neptune in her 12th house, this really amplifies it because the 12th house is also symbolic of the collective unconscious. And with Saturn there, she has an ability to create a form, a structure within the confines of this inspirational energy. It seems to suggest that she will be tapping into something new in the collective. If you remember when she started that YouTube series, it was when Neptune had gone into Pisces for the first time. And that's when she wrote that book about being this awkward and insecure girl, which is a very Neptune in Pisces thematic. And now that Neptune and Saturn are going into Aries, it's going to be more empowering. And we were talking about her book and how she's going to be releasing this book, which is about empowering creatives and empowering people to stand up for their own abilities, to be somebody that sits at the table, who has their own right to be there. And especially with all of the struggle about DEI. Okay, so let's look at Stephen Miller's chart. Now, he has a double A chart, so even more solid than Issa's. I can't imagine anyone not knowing who he is, but if you don't, he's one of the main players in the Trump administration, ironically, a Jewish white nationalist. I had no idea that somebody would be both Jewish and a white nationalist. It just didn't dawn at me that there are people like that, but apparently there are. And he is extreme in his anti-immigration stance and is often accused of co-opting Nazi propaganda for his own speeches, which is such a cognitive dissonance for me. He has Pluto at 2 degrees Scorpio at the top of his chart. He is wearing that plutonic energy for all of us to see, a powerful position in the White House. And so he's going to be having a Pluto square in his first house. Pluto has been transiting his first house for a while. So he's definitely experiencing confrontations with his identity, which is exactly what we were just talking about. How there was this cognitive dissonance with him being Jewish and actually exploiting Nazi propaganda. So he's really confronting that personal power as it relates to his identity. And Pluto is on the ninth house side of his midheaven. So it really is about ideologies and immigration. Ninth house is about foreign travel. And he's also confronting the themes about the law. And Jeffrey Green says that people with Pluto in the ninth house often experience a feeling of being a foreigner in a foreign land. They are said to have many past lives in different foreign environments, which can lead to a fragmentation in this life. They can hold dogmatic beliefs in an attempt to anchor themselves to something solid. His Pluto is in line 1. in the 28th gate, and it's hanging off of an undefined spleen. And people with an undefined spleen definitely have issues with fear of survival. A lot of fear in people who have undefined spleens. So it's just magnified in his chart. And he has his south node hanging off of his spleen in the gate of instinctual memory. And instinctual memory is not intellectual memory. He just has these deeply buried memories, possibly deep ancestral memories of the Holocaust. And these past life memories are likely all mixed in with his present day reality. He most likely truly believes in this great reset conspiracy theory. And he really does think he needs to protect himself and his family before it's too late. Mars, the ruler of Pluto, is in Leo, conjunct Mercury in the seventh house, and it's opposing Jupiter in Aquarius in the first house. These opposing planets also square his nodes on both sides. The square is sometimes referred to as a skip step, something that we have not integrated in a prior lifetime that we're repeating in this lifetime to see if we can ascend from this pattern in this lifetime. So they throw him back and forth between his south node familiarity and where he is being oriented in the future. He can be bombastic and dogmatic in his speaking and thinking, with a perspective that he knows better than anyone else, with that Leo energy opposing Jupiter in Aquarius. This is compounded by the connection of a trine to Uranus and the moon in Sagittarius in his 11th house. This conjunction adds a rebelliousness and fanatic zeal to his perspective of others in his life and groups that he others in his life. His life path is also focused on relational themes, with Venus in Cancer in his seventh house. His nodes are moving from a journey focused on his career and status to one more emotionally fulfilling and family oriented. He's going to be moving toward examining his roots, his emotional foundation, his sense of security. So again, transiting Pluto is moving through his first house. So he is more specifically confronting his personal power as it relates to his career. And you can see this happening in real time as he's gained quite a foothold in the Trump administration. His natal Neptune is in the 12th house at a critical degree in Capricorn. They call 0 degrees of cardinal signs critical degrees, and it's trine his sun at 0 degrees Virgo in the 8th house. The 12th house, again, is about the unconscious, both the personal and the collective. And Saturn and Neptune will conjunct at a critical degree in Aries, and that will be on the cusp of his 3rd house. So from what I can already see, this is about creating contagious thought systems to tap into the collective unconscious. So what will be the consequences of doing this? And will he wake up during this time? Stephen is born on the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is the cross the upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction will fall under, except it's on the opposite side in Pisces. So his sun is in the 8th house, and this new cycle will start when the sun is in his 2nd house. And it's a cycle that we're all heading toward in 2027, according to Human Design. This theme is about waking up or staying profoundly asleep and continuing to follow others who want to control us with things like technology. We will either slow walk into a disaster waiting to happen, or we'll wake up to save ourselves from it. So how many people will wake up during this time? And will Stephen Miller achieve his aims, or will he be confronted with something more powerful than himself? Will he himself wake up before it's too late? I hope this video was helpful in understanding your own journey during this time. And I hope that you check out some of the videos that I'll link below in case you want to explore this topic further. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if you want a personal astrologer to help you understand the midlife transits that you are going to be embarking on with this Pluto square. I am here to help. It's one of my favorite things to do is to help people understand these cycles. So good luck, and I'll see you next time.